Okay, welcome back. Back here with David Ryan, Master Trader Program Super Performance Workshop. Just real quick, we're going to recap what we went over so far. We went over categories and catalyst valuation. We talked about the trend, the 4 stages of a trend. Now we're going to get into some fundamentals, what we call fundamentals to focus on. We're going to look at what attracts institutions into a stock. And I want to point out that we're going to look at these various variables or parameters, if you will, in kind of slice and dice them in a bunch of different ways. But through all this next segment, we're only going to be focusing on three things: earnings, sales, and margins. Like I said, we're going to be looking at them from different angles, and I'm going to show you a bunch of different ways to analyze them and slice them and dice them and apply them to various scenarios. But we're only gauging earnings, sales, and margins. And that's really all you need to look at. When we're talking about growth stocks in particular, you don't need, all this other, book value and all these ratios. And you really, if you can get good and pretty much, through this whole entire workshop, if you can get good at the things that we're showing you, where price, volume, some moving averages for smoothing, making sure you're in a strong uptrend, earnings, sales, margins, and you apply all this properly, you're not going to need anything more. Dave, you've been doing this a long time. Between the two of us, I don't even know how many years now. I don't want to even think about it because it scares me how old I am. But you've been doing this a long time, and you worked with one of the best on the face of the planet, William O'Neill. How complicated did he make this investing equation? As far as using the various aspects that all the tools that we have to work with. There's so much information now, and there's so many things to look at. What did O'Neill boil it down to, and what did you boil it down to all these years?
Well, it was basically the CAN-SLIM characteristics, and those were the characteristics of the greatest winning stocks of all time. And I keep on saying the market is not that complex. You just have to really simplify it down to as what we're discussing in this whole workshop, but then also add in your own life. Where are you shopping? What products are you buying? What are your friends buying? What are the trends in the marketplace? And you just combine your life with these sets of rules, and you should do really pretty well in the marketplace. It takes a while to get up to speed with all this, but doing those two things, combining those two things, you'll have some good success.
Yeah, nothing has really changed. Now, there's no special set of business dynamics that are different because a company is public versus that it's not public. It's the same business dynamics that drive a company to grow larger and to be successful. If you go back, to the 1920s and 30s, Coca-Cola was like Monster beverages today. You can go back and look at one time there was hundreds of car companies where car companies, before it was boiled down to GM and Ford and Chrysler and just a few, there were hundreds of car companies. They were like high-tech companies. So you go back, even in the internet phase, we had all these internet companies, and then it boiled down to just a few. This is the same business dynamics that take place, and it basically all revolves around. There's 3 ways that a company can grow their earnings, and growing the earnings is going to grow the stock. Now, if you can figure that out, that's great. That's, Peter Lynch and a lot of these guys, these, fund managers that became legendary investors, they're trying to figure out earnings growth, right? So there's 3 ways: sell more, raise prices, or cut costs. Now, there's some things that you have to know about this. So, for instance, you can sell more of an existing product, right? Or you can raise prices, or you can sell a new product and sell more product, but you're selling new product, or you can cut cost and you can rid losing operations. You can improve productivity. Here's the thing to realize, though. If you cut cost, there's only so much you can cut. After a while, you cut cost and there's no more to cut. You've got to grow the top line to grow earnings. So you're going to have to grow revenue. You ridding losing operations, increasing productivity. All that's great. And when you combine that with the growth of the sales, this is where it gets very powerful. I'm going to show you in just a minute on how all this works, and it's going to make a lot of sense to you, and you're really going to be able to see the power behind getting really good at knowing how to analyze these few metrics and put them all together. Now, we showed you the 4 stages of a stock's maturation cycle from a technical level, right? Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Stage 2 is where we want to be in, right? We don't want to, certainly not stage 4. That's the declining phase. That's where you be looking at shortest stocks. Stage 1 is the neglect phase. Well, when you look at the earnings cycle, it's going to fit in with this maturation cycle. And basically what happens is and another thing I should point out here is that if you're a value player or you're a growth player, you might be operating in a completely different part of the maturation cycle. So for instance, value stock buyers are going to be buying the stock when stocks are in stage 4 and when they're in stage 1. And a lot of these guys, someone like a Bill Miller, it might be selling a stock when the stock is in stage 2, might even be selling it in the early stages of stage 2. And you might be buying it at the time that they're selling it, but you can both make money. Right, it's just a different style. Now, I don't know anything about value investing. That's not my forte, but I know everything about what I do. And that's the key, is for you to learn everything that there is to know about the way you do it. So let me explain to you what happens here with this earnings maturation cycle. So you start off with basically a stock that's been neglected. It's in stage 1, and then suddenly something happens. And this is sort of the N in CHහැ. Now, this isn't a CHහැ seminar, but I could tell you right now, there's a lot of overlap. We're just building upon previous work. I'm building on work that started with Jesse Livermore and then Richard Love in the 60s and 70s, and then William O'Neill. And I'm sure some of you will be building on my work and David's work going forward. So this is the same thing that's been working for years and years and years and decades. At some point, there'll be some positive development, whether it's a change in the business dynamics, and it'll show up in the earnings, and you'll get the earnings to come out better than expected. And now you've got computers. These institutions run these computer models, and they'll pick this up with a surprise model. From that point, analysts will start revising their earnings estimates up. And this is what creates momentum in the stock. And then you start getting EPS momentum, where you get acceleration in the earnings. And now the stock goes from a value stock that was neglected to a growth stock that's, taking off and making a big move during this part of its cycle. Now, on the flip side, the exact opposite happens. You get a loss of EPS momentum. It starts to stall. You start seeing deceleration in the earnings. You get a negative surprise. Negative models pick it up, and now the stock is sold off. Institutions start dumping the stock. Estimates are revised down, and now you're right back to a value stock again. And you're selling the stock, and now the value people, they might be entertaining buying the stock at this point. So this maturation cycle, again, this is also part of an overall perspective, but it's really important that you understand how this works.
And Mark,
go ahead.
I just wanted to add, if you go back to that, I know you wanted to build and that's a great example of what's going on. But lots of times, a stock will actually, on a price basis, will have already started rolling over, and really even start into a downtrend before you actually start seeing that loss of EPS momentum. Because I've seen so many stocks that have been down 50% off their highs, and then they come out with that bad earnings report. Right. So the price of the stock does not always fit exactly is what's going on. It could be a little, some of these things could be a little shorter, a little bit earlier, a little bit later. And so that's why I've always said, I buy on fundamentals and technicals, and lots of times I put most of my weight on the sell side, on the technicals. But this is, this is a model of exactly, what's going to happen, but maybe not in exactly that type of timing.
Right. And I'm going to point something out, because I think this is the 8th year that David's been doing this with me. And every single year he goes ahead. And we're going to get to that in a minute, but David always does this. He moves us ahead. So we are going to get to that in just a little bit. David's absolutely correct. And we'll point it out in just a minute. We're almost there. So let's real quick here, just look, and I'm just giving you perspective right now. Earning surprises are going to drive your earning surprises are going to drive your stock. And this is what produces what we call post earnings drift. And the reason why you get post earnings drift, see, the thought that the market is efficient. Yes, it is efficient a lot of the time. And in some areas, it's very efficient. But there's other areas, and these are the areas that we're going to show you the traffic in. There's areas where it's not efficient at all, and it's very inefficient. And the reason why is, and it's all based on post earnings drift, or post news drift, of things that happen with the company that can't be fully discounted. Let me explain to you how that happens. So earnings are revised, all right? Or earnings estimates, stocks move, and analysts, make their decisions based on what they think a stock is going to earn, and then they put a PE multiple on that, and that gives them valuation, and they can figure out where a stock should be and where it is, and whether it's undervalued and so forth, or overvalued. So the problem with this is that, number one, analysts don't want to risk being wrong. They don't want to risk. They're basically protecting their job. So what they do is they sort of crowd around the average. So if there's 10 analysts, something like Coca-Cola might have, 50 analysts following it. The average, estimate, let's just say, is, $1.32 for the year. So if you were to go and make this outlandish, estimate that it was going to be $1.78, that would be taking a big risk, because now you're way away from the herd, and you're going rogue. So what happens is they're very conservative. So the companies can beat these estimates, but now that's also figured out too. All right. There's the whisper number and all these things where, analysts are pretty smart, and these people that are, at Fidelities and these big companies, these teams of, MBAs that are, forensic accountants, they're pretty smart. So they can even look beyond that. But the one thing that they can't look beyond, or they can't figure out, is that when you have a company that's growing its earnings at a very rapid rate, let's just say, 50% or 100% per quarter, there's no way that you can put an appropriate PE, or you can forecast where that stock's going to be 4, 8, 12 quarters down the road. Even the CEO himself has no clue how long they're going to be able to deliver that type of earnings. Now, Cisco delivered triple-digit earnings for 16 consecutive quarters. You do the math. Let's just say that you had a little, you had a company, you had a small, plumbing business or something, and you were doing $500,000 in sales a year, or $1 million in sales a year, right? Just take that times 100%, times 16 quarters, and take a look at where your company would be. You do that for very long, and you're a Fortune 500 company in not too long. It's really quite incredible. I want to show you. Let's do some math here real quick. I actually put this slide together at the very last minute just to show this point. So let's just say you start off with $100 per share. All right, $100 per share in earnings. And analysts can figure it out pretty good that 4 quarters is going to be triple-digit growth for the next 4 quarters. So if you took $100 times 100%, you'd have 200, then 400, 800, 1600, right? So 4 quarters, a year later, the earnings are 16 times higher. But now, what about the visibility out another year? What if the company was able to do that for another 4 quarters, but you weren't really sure about that? You weren't sure about that estimate. Okay, let's do it 4 more quarters. Now we go 4 more quarters, and now it's 256 times. The earnings have grown 256 times, as opposed to just 16 times in the first 4 quarters, because this is compounding. Do that in another 4 quarters, like Cisco, well, actually Cisco did it for 8 more quarters. The numbers are astronomical, and that's why Cisco Systems went up 70,000% during that bull market. That's why in Amazon it's gone up 80, 100,000%. It's because of the earnings growth, and the reason why it can keep going, and it doesn't get everything's not baked into the cake where you can say, oh yeah, I mean, this is where they're going to be in 5 years, and the stock has it all priced in, is because there's nobody, not even the CEO himself, can know that those type of earnings are going to sustain themselves. So,
and Mark, I would also say that in this this day and age, I forget what year where, and it was Regulation T or Reg T, where analysts, where companies had to, any information they're going to put out there has to be put out to the whole public.
Right.
Where in the past, the CEO could sit down with an analyst and kind of wink at them and say, well, I think our numbers should be right around here. But now none of that, I guess, exists. And so I think it's even harder for analysts to know exactly what their earnings are going to be a quarter or 2, 3 quarters out.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, there's no business dynamics change. And they can change for the better, for the worse, or they can, stay the way they've been and have a company dominate an industry for a long period of time. I mean, who would have ever guessed, what Amazon is doing? I mean, Amazon was hated. The analysts said that Amazon would never even make money. They said that in the 1990s, in 97, when I was buying Amazon, the analysts said that Amazon was never going to be profitable. I mean, boy, did they get that one wrong. So now we're showing you about, it's a really important point here. And that is, and again, we're going to get into what David was talking about also about selling on technicals. And there are some caveats to these numbers. The rule of thumb is that as much as we're going to show you all these numbers and how to slice and dice them, the rule is never trust the numbers. Never trust the story, no matter how good the story is, no matter how great it sounds, no matter how great the numbers are, whether there's triple-digit earnings and sales every quarter, no matter what those numbers are, you're never going to trust those unless they're confirmed by price action. So, for instance, you're not going to, we're going to, everything we show you, you're not going to apply this to a stock that's in a stage 4 downtrend. And something that I should have said before, and I need to say now, everything that we show you in this entire workshop, it's in chronological order. Everything we show you going forward, everything afterwards builds upon the previous lessons. So nothing negates what we told you previous. So if we say stage 2 uptrend, well, going forward, everything's applied to stocks in a stage 2 uptrend. If we tell you, X, Y, and Z, everything going forward is going to be applied to a stage 2 uptrend and X, Y, Z. It's all chronological and all builds on each other. Okay. Very important points. Dave, let me ask you a question. I mean, I think I asked you this before, but I mean, no matter how good we see these numbers and no matter how great, how popular the company is or how, quality the company is, are you buying these stocks if the technicals aren't there?
No. Your stock has to be starting into an uptrend, and the story and the numbers always have to go along with what you're seeing in the market. And if the stock is going down, but you hear this great story, wait until the stock starts turning and getting into an uptrend. To me, I don't care if the CEO lives next door to you and he's telling you all these great things about the company. Only if that stock is in an uptrend should you be, buying that stock, because, he's always trying to promote and trying to build up and say great things about his company. So, no, I mean, times where I've lost money is where I get so enamored by the story that I start fudging on the technicals or even on the numbers. And it turns into a loss.
Yeah, it's so funny because I pound the table on this particular point, and I remember O'Neill pounding the table to me, and basically just saying, because I was at at one of his workshops, and somebody was just peppering him. I mean, you remember with O'Neill, he would just rip people apart, worse than me, and I can rip people apart in the audience. But I remember someone was just pounding him about, yeah, but the numbers are great, and he just said, look, if the numbers are so great, the story's so great, why isn't the damn stock going up? I mean, come on. What are you stupid? He said. Why isn't the stock performing? If everything's so great, why isn't the stock performing? You have to have some respect for the intelligence of the market. I assure you that the stock is going to be right way more often than you are.